Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it would have been nice if members were supplied with the copies of that report so that when the mover is going through accessible copies, I can confirm with my neighbor, Senator Crystal Asige, that she does not have an accessible copy of the report. Thank
Senator
you,
Sifuna, I am informed that all the iPads are actually with the report. However, I also direct that the clerk's desk can avail for those who are not digitally able to access from the iPad the report. Senator Wambua, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, mine is just a matter of procedure. Mr. Speaker, you know, it is these small things that really eat from the dignity of this House. I've seen Senator Cherargei casually just cross over. I even warned him, and he proceeded to cross to the other side. Mr. Speaker, you know, we must give dignity to this House, honestly.
Senator Cherargei, remember yesterday a similar incident happened, and the chair will not hesitate to apply the rules as are required. You're out of order, kindly comply, do what is procedurally required of you as a ranking member of this House. You cannot ignore the fact that there are rules that are to be followed. Proceed. Senator Cherargei. Senator Shakila, take the floor and move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Senate adopts the report of the Committee, Powers and Privilege on an inquiry on its own motion into conduct of Senator Gloria Orobwa, MP, and to establish of the conduct, if the conduct constituted breach of parliamentary privilege, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th August 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Committee of Powers and Privilege is established under Section 15(1) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act number 29 of 2017. Section 15(4) of the Act provides for the function of the committee as follows. The functions of the Committee of Power and Privilege shall be to inquire under the conduct of a member whose conduct is alleged to constitute breach of privilege in terms of Section 16. B, perform such other functions as may be specified in this Act. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, Section 15(5) of the Act empowers the Committee of Powers and Privilege to inquire either by its own motion or as a result of a complaint made by any person into the conduct of a member whom conduct is alleged to constitute a breach of privilege in terms of Section 16. Mr. Speaker, the members are as follows. Chairperson, Speaker Kingi, Senator Alexander, point of order.
What is your point of order, Senator Fatuma Adulo?
Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm requesting if the students who are here can be recognized so that we can discuss this matter comfortably. Thank you. Recognize and release them, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the members are on the list, and I will go through the charges, Mr. Speaker, briefly. Yeah. Charge number 1, Mr. Speaker, is the conduct constituted breach of privilege under Section 16E and Paragraph 7A of the 4th Schedule in the Parliamentary Power and Privilege Act 2017. Count 1, allegation of suits of sexual favor. Mr. Speaker, that the senator of diverse dates made an unsubstantiated allegations that there were instances of pursuant of sexual favors in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups.
Senator.
Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shakila, the chair is on the mic. What is your point of order, Senator Wamatinga?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think it's prudent that you rule on what Senator Duaro has asked. And looking up there, Mr. Speaker, I see that there are some small school
You've
children.
made your point. You've made your point. We have made arrangements. We are going to recognize them in a moment. We're getting the communication. And
Mr. Speaker, some of the content of these documents, I think they are sensitive, and we should watch on who is in the house when you're talking about them. Thank you.
Very well, very well. That's noted. The communication is coming. We shall, in a moment, deal. Senator Tumo, you are not yet. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Chair. I think apart from releasing the students now here, you should direct Mr. Speaker that until this motion is finalized, no more students should be allowed to the public gallery. I think you should give that direction.
Noted. Senator Karungo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a public house. The debate is live. Even those kids at home are watching. I don't see any problem whatsoever for us discussing this issue. They are here to learn so that they can see what we go through or what we say in this house. So, Mr. Speaker, unless now you have to order, we shut even online, so that it becomes a kamukunji or becomes a, you know. So this is not a personal issue. It is a matter of public concern. It is a report of a committee. So I don't see the reason why we should bar anybody from accessing this debate.
Senator Karungu, the chair had ruled, and indeed the people who are in the gallery have already been discharged, and we are going to proceed with the motion. Senator Shagila, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, count 2, allegations of favorism and discrimination, that the Senate in diverse states made unsubstantiated allegations that there was discrimination in Parliament by posting various messages at the Senate business WhatsApp groups, and made allegations during a media briefing held in the Media Center main Parliament building. Mr. Speaker, count 3, allegations of corruption, that the Senate in diverse dates made unsubstantiated allegations that there were cases of corruption in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp group. Count 4, allegations of back kicks and legislative agenda, that the Senate on diverse dates made unsubstantiated allegations that there were requests for kickbacks for legislative agenda in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups. Charge 2, conduct constituting breach of privilege under paragraph 8 of the 4th schedule to the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017 on the Code of Conduct for Members of Parliament. Count 1, allegations disrespecting fellow senators, that the senator on diverse dates published information that was disrespectful towards the fellow senators in the Senate business WhatsApp group. Count 2, allegations of inputting improper motive on fellow senators, that the senator on diverse dates imputed improper motive on other senators by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups. All these reports are in the reports. All these postings are in the reports. The committee, noting the gravity of the charges and conduct of the Senator, Gloria Oroba, MP findings of the committee, and having reviewed the sanctions provided for the Section 17(3) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, as well as the practice in other jurisdictions, finds the Senator Oroba MP conduct was in breach of parliamentary privilege and recommend that, number one, pursuant to Section 17(3)(g) of Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, the senator be suspended from the House of the remainder of the second session for the 13th Parliament. Number two, pursuant to Section 17(3)(d) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, restrictions of access to the precincts of Parliament defined in Section 3 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017 and Standing Order 2 of the Senate Standing Orders, and withholding the use of enjoyment of any unspecified facilities provided to members by Parliament to be applied to the senator for the remaining of the second session of the 13th Parliament. Admitted and Privilege Act 2017 in the manner stated in the report. Mr. Speaker, sir, on behalf of the committee, I take this opportunity to thank the members of the committee for their immense contribution to the inquiry that culminated to the report. The committee wishes to also thank the Secretariat of the Senate for the necessary support. On behalf of the Committee for Powers and Privilege, I have the honor and pleasure to present the report of the Committee of Powers and Privilege of its inquiry on its own motion into conduct of Senator Gloria Orobwa, MP, and to establish if the conduct constituted breach of Parliament privilege in the Senate. I thank you, and I request Mr. Wamatinga Wahome, MP, to second. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wamatinga, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I like to second this motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sat in the committee that discussed the conduct of Senator Gloria Orobwa. What I must say, Mr. Speaker, sir, regardless, we must know that we are all colleagues in this place. We have a collective responsibility to take care of the reputation of this House. We have a collective responsibility to take care of the reputation of members, and we also have a collective and moral obligation to ensure that the standard of this House, as seen by the public out there, does not become affected in whichever way. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's my observation, my humble submission, that we all have other channels of dealing with whatever grievances we might have without resorting into hitting under the berry. And I therefore would want to urge my colleagues, for the remaining 4 years that we'll be in this House, let's embrace collegiality, let's embrace sobriety, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we portray an important and very, 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 very moral obligation of us all to portray this House as a respectable House. Mr. Speaker, sir, we must never forget that people out there do look at us as the pace setters, as role models, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, when there are issues that we must discuss, be it in the social media or even in the floor of the House, let's never forget that out there, people are watching and looking at us and debating what we are doing, and therefore, we must ensure that we do not in any way undermine their responsibility, their privileges, or even the dignity that's associated with being honorable members. Mr. Speaker, sir, being a honorable member has quite a lot of responsibility. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we have in public gallery, people, students who come here so that they can learn, let them learn from the best. I do, Mr. Speaker, sir, believe that there are channels that we are able to weigh our grievances, that we can be able, yes, to differ on opinion, to differ on principles, but basically to hold each other and treat each other with a lot of decorum. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is important for this House to commit itself to to upholding the traditions, the dignity, and most importantly, the image that it is seen by those people out there. Mr. Speaker, sir, my humble submission is the collective responsibility we have when we walk inside that door makes us and must bind us to ensure that sobriety and most importantly, dignity is upheld. Mr. Speaker, sir, I second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges on the inquiry on its own motion into the conduct of Senator Gloria Orwoba, MP, and to establish if the conduct constituted breach of parliamentary privilege laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th August 2023. Honorable Senators, I now call upon Senator Cherargei Samson Kiprotich, Okongo Omogeni Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my comments on the report that has been tabled by the Powers and Privileges Committee. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that this is unprecedented. In the history that Parliament has been in existence, I've never seen a situation, Mr. Speaker, where such harsh and excessive, almost unreasonable verdict is being meted out on a member. More so, Mr. Speaker, a lady member of Parliament, a young member of Parliament who should be nurtured, grow, and make women of the Republic proud. Mr. Speaker, if there is a day that I feel ashamed as a senator, it's today, Mr. Speaker. There is one time, Mr. Speaker, that PLO Lumumba said, you should never respond to a mosquito with a hammer. That's what we have done today. I don't agree with certain conducts of Senator Gloria. I don't agree. And many times I've reached out to Gloria to have a word with her as an elder, Mr. Speaker. And that's how it should be. We all falter, we all make mistakes, but we must walk along with each other, Mr. Speaker. I've said before, Mr. Speaker, if I see an injustice to any senator, may it be on this side or on that side, I'll never walk along with it. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, even if we wanted to pass some judgment on Senator Orwoba, not what I'm seeing in the report, Mr. Speaker, a proposal to suspend her for the remainder of the second session of the 13th Parliament. That is excessive. In all fairness, it's excessive. It's unjust. It's unreasonable. That's not, I don't expect that from the UDA government. You should be nurturing these young senators that you have nominated to this House. We are not the ones who nominated Senator Orwoba. I'm sure you did a proper background check on her. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to go on record as opposed to this report, especially the judgment. You could have even recommended suspending her from 5 sittings. This is the first time she is facing a disciplinary committee before the Powers and Privileges. And I want to tell you, honorable senators, today you are celebrating because it is Senator Gloria Orwoba. Tomorrow it will be you. Because you want to set a precedent where you do something small, you are expelled for the entire of the session. I want to remind you the words of a senior senator who served here, Senator Orengo. He once sat here and he told Beth Mugo that revolutions eat their own children. And now you can see who does began with Senator Gloria Orwoba. Tomorrow it will be somebody else. On our side, we are used. Our leadership here, So, Mr. Speaker, even if...
What's your point of order, Senator Aaron Cheriot?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Omogeni is a commissioner, a man I respect and hold in high regard. But is it in order for him to want to reduce a report of a committee of this House into the operations of a party? UDA does not feature anywhere. The member who moved the report, for your information, is a member of the minority side. Bwana Commissioner, please respect the office that you hold. Be responsible in your utterances. This is about lead by example. That's why I told you, if I was in your position, Senator Omogeni, these are the matters that you leave as elders, we speak last. You are the person that we defer to as our senior and as a leader, surely. You cannot reduce a committee report to want to play it along party position. You've just seen me trying to consult with Senator, my leader of minority, because I'm trying to see, this is really embarrassing to us as a House, and we are trying to put our heads together to see what can we do to cover ourselves. Please, I request you, my good neighbor and my friend, you can make better decisions than the one you are making this afternoon. Don't reduce this into a party issue. Please, my brother, I beg of you, because you are a commissioner and a man that I respect so much.
Senator Sifuna, what is your point of intervention?
Mr. Speaker, I was a bit concerned by one of the submissions by the Leader of Majority, that in fact the report of the committee was moved by a member of the minority delegation. Mr. Speaker, that has nothing to do with the political, sides of the House. I have just a minute, Majority Leader, please. I heard you in silence. I am saying that it was a request of the committee, not a request of the minority side, for Senator Shakila to move that motion. She was just doing her job as a member of the committee. That particular point, Majority Leader, I don't think has been made in good faith. And Mr. Speaker, I wish that it is clear that Senator Shakila only moved the report upon request of her committee itself. It's not a directive that came from the leadership of the minority side.
Senator Okongo Mogeni, you take note that this is a serious matter that concerns actually the privilege of this Honorable House. And therefore, you're out of order to make reference to the fact that this is either minority or majority, or even to make reference to specific utterances regarding the particulars of either party in terms of nomination or otherwise. So kindly refrain as senior ranking member and use parliamentary and appropriate language.
Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the chair, and I can't question your directive. But I wonder, under what standing order was the leader of majority intervening? Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, the point is, and I want to make it very clear, on issues that touch on an injustice, I will not be swayed to go by majority. I'm willing to go on record that I've stood alone on this matter, Mr. Speaker. Because as I've said, Mr. Speaker, we must be a house, even when we go to our courts of law, Mr. Speaker. The judgment that you pass on a crime, Mr. Speaker, must be reasonable, not excessive, Mr. Speaker. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that we are setting a precedent that will come back to bite us. Listen to me, senators. It will come back to bite us. And I will not, Mr. Speaker, I want to be on record, Mr. Speaker, I will not dance on the grave of the deceased. I will not, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Speaker, is that I do not agree for a moment with some of the conduct of Senator Gloria Oruoba. But what punishment should we, as a House, meet or not? That's the question that I'm raising this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've watched the way we have carried the proceedings of this House, Mr. Speaker, and I've stated on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, that in a Commonwealth Parliament, debates of this House should be lively, Mr. Speaker. Every Wednesdays, I watch proceedings of the House of Commons, Mr. Speaker. I see the Prime Minister of UK. He comes to the House, he sits there, he's asked questions, people shout shame, but in this house, we have set a precedent where you are supposed to sit as if you are in a funeral, Mr. Speaker. We are going the wrong way, Mr. Speaker. When we fought to have a parliament that is independent, Mr. Speaker, we wanted to get a climate that helps us to conduct our business, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, as practicing Christians, we owe it a duty to ourselves to nurture this young senator called Gloria, Mr. Speaker. And you can, the standing orders are very clear, Mr. Speaker. You can start with a warning, you can start with a suspension of 3 days, then you elevate it. If you reach a time when you are saying now you are suspending her for the remainder of the term, we'll all agree. But on the first occasion that she's being taken before the Powers and Privileges Committee, and then you bring a report to us that she should be suspended for the remainder of her term, Mr. Speaker, that is punishment that is harsh, to say the least. So I want to plead with you, senators. There are many things that Senator Gloria does that I don't agree with, including when we raised issues of members of minority who are arrested.
Senator Okongo, there is, yes, Senator Wambua, what's your point of information? And would you like to be informed in the first place by Wambua?
Mr. Speaker, Wambua is a church elder. I will not decline to be informed by him.
Proceed, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, so that Senator Omogen walks the narrow path and the right path, he has 3 times made reference to suspension for the remainder of the term. Mr. Speaker, I think the decision of the committee, if I not get it right, was that suspension for the remainder of the session, which expires maybe in December. Yeah, so that we don't mislead the House and we don't mislead the public, that the senator remains really on the straight and the narrow. It is for the session, not for the term. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okongo, I'm sure you are informed as you proceed with your...
I told you it's always good to be informed by a church elder. And I stand corrected. I've seen it's true that it's for the remainder of the second session, which takes us to the end of this session, which is December, which I agree. The second point, Mr. Speaker, I've read in the report, though I don't have the details, I've read on the report, Mr. Speaker, that this matter is subject of court proceedings. I've not seen details of the case number because this report has been circulated while we are in session, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if indeed it's true that Senator Uroba raised the issue of a matter that was pending before court, Mr. Speaker, in the interest of justice, Mr. Speaker, in the interest of justice, Mr. Speaker, the committee should have given room to the court to adjudicate and make a verdict on the matters that were raised by Senator Uroba in court. And I want to bring it to your attention, Mr. Speaker, that the current leader of minority in the National Assembly, was himself subjected to such a punishment by the National Assembly. But when the matter went to court, Mr. Speaker, the High Court of the Republic of Kenya, the matter was heard by Justice Odunga, Mr. Speaker, and Justice Odunga made an observation, Mr. Speaker, that any time the Powers and Privileges wants to punish a member of Parliament, the punishment should not be excessive, the punishment should not be unreasonable. So, Mr. Speaker, I plead with the House, it is right to pass punishment against Senator Uroba, but I plead with the House to pass to support a punishment that is fair, that is reasonable, that gives Senator Gloria an opportunity to reform and to correct our wayward, misconduct. So, Mr. Speaker, I finally agree that it's in order for her to apologize to the House, and I plead with you, Senator Gloria, that you are a young senator. You have a long way to go. We love you as our colleague. we also plead with you. We also plead with you, please, to know how to conduct yourself as a member of this house. We are your elders. I'm speaking to you as your uncle. Please, also learn from what has happened today. In future, conduct yourself in a manner that does not demean the stature of a senator who has got the privilege of sitting in this house. And remember, your partyhood has been very fair to you, to give you a nomination at your age. So please, Senator Gloria Ruoba, go back, do self-reflection, and watch how you use social media. You can see even Trump, the former president of the United States of America, is in trouble because of the tweets he made while he was president. So please, Senator Gloria, take a moment of reflection. Take a moment of reflection and know how to conduct yourself while serving as a senator. So, Mr. Speaker, I oppose the motion.
Senator Cheriot Aaron, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise under Standing Order number 110 and wish to read as follows. 110.1, that a senator who wishes to postpone to some future occasion the further discussion of a question which has been proposed from the chair may, for reasons stated, claim to move that the debate be now adjourned. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to humbly call on the collective wisdom of the House, because this is a very emotive issue. Number one, it involved a colleague. She might be right in your opinion, she might be wrong. Number two, the person who chaired this committee is the Speaker of the House. The person who we are told is victim to these harassments is none other than the clerk of the House. Whichever way you look at it, there can never be a winner and a loser in this conversation. We will look so dirty, we will look so silly as a house. It will be bad of us eventually. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I must concede that it was due to a lapse of concentration on my side. If I had known that there was going to be such a debate, perhaps earlier the prudent thing to do would have been to consult with the leader of minority, walk to the Speaker's house, and sought that this matter be handled perhaps differently. You know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that last time, when the Assembly had such a situation, where a report was brought and the House defeated it, they amended their standing orders. Today, if you go to the National Assembly, the Powers and Privilege Committee is not chaired by their Speaker, for the obvious reason that it is not just proper and decent for you to be Speaker and preside over a House, bring a committee, report chaired by you, then it be subject to discussion by senators who will critique your work. Some will say certain things that you may not like. So for the very many reasons, and I want to plead with everybody, just everybody who's, all my colleagues, that I called the minority leader behind. We have a room called the consultations room, and I pleaded with him. And I said with my brother, you are my senior and an elder. Do you like this debate going on in the House? He said, I'm equally agonizing, and I'm trying to speak to members of my delegation to share with them that, what do we do? Therefore, I consulted with him and I said, can we at least seek leave of the House that you allow us to perhaps as a leadership retreat back and have a reconsideration of this matter? Then we'll find a way of resolving this without having to air our dirty linen in public. So I want to plead with you, colleague senators. You perhaps maybe hold a different view on this issue. There's something you may want to say, but I want to humbly plead with you that allow us, in the same way that we have consulted with the leader of minority, and perhaps he'll have a chance to explain and say himself, what he thinks about this. That, Mr. Speaker, I want to move that debate be adjourned on this question until a later date. And I want to request, Mr. Speaker, that the Leader of Minority seconds me in that proposal. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader, Senator Amazayo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been in this House long enough, and I think this is the first time that we have come across such a challenge. Mr. Speaker, it requires wisdom to keep dignity of this House, and we should not expose it by washing some kind of linen that might not be very good to the public. Whatever the Leader of Majority has stated, I fully second it, as it will go a long way to sort out quite a number of issues. I second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, now pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 110, would like to propose the motion on the request by the majority leaders to whether or not this debate on this motion can proceed or not. And I will allow members to contribute on the request by the Leader of Majority, seconded by the minority, to adjourn the motion or otherwise, and not on the merits of the particular motion that had earlier on begun to be debated on. And honorable members, I now propose the question that the debate be now adjourned. Karungu Thang, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, not to be seen, not to agree with the Leader of Majority, when you are rearranging the order paper, you said we are going to order number 8, and we jumped the statements and questions because you wanted this issue to be expedited with before we close for recess, Mr. Speaker. So I don't know whether we are going against your ruling. I seek your indulgence on the issue.
Senator Karungu, from what I've heard you saying, you are in opposition to the adjournment, and you can speak to that, whether you do not want the motion to be adjourned or not. So I will allow Senator Halwale.
Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the majority has now brought before this House is what is called a dilatory motion. Mr. Speaker, a dilatory motion attempts to stop proceedings on a motion that had otherwise been procedurally been brought before the House. Mr. Speaker, I want to invite you to look at 110(3). Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I read. If the Speaker is of the opinion that a dilatory motion is an abuse of the proceedings of the Senate, the Speaker may forthwith put the question thereon or decline to propose it. Mr. Speaker, 110(3) invites you to make a decision before you propose the motion to open debate. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore want you to exercise 110(3), and as you do so, consider two things. The first one, Mr. Speaker, is that it will be an abuse of the proceedings of the Senate, if a motion which has been approved by the Speaker is then stood down. Mr. Speaker, it will also be an abuse of the proceedings of the Senate if a motion which has got clear timelines is then stood down so that the timelines are negated. Mr. Speaker, this motion is supposed to be concluded within 14 days. So if you make that determination and you allow us to go ahead, there are many who want to support and there are many who want to oppose, and I'm glad to tell members on this point of order that as the whip of the Kenya Kwanza, we have no Kenya Kwanza position. This is a private matter to this house that is supposed to do housekeeping. If you are happy that you can be called a rapist, then you'll oppose the motion. So this is a housekeeping motion. Let's keep out the issue of the opposition, the issue of the government side, the issue of parties, coalitions. We just allow members to follow their own minds, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni, indeed the chair had made a determination under 110.2 as regards the dilatory motion that was moved by the leader of majority. And therefore, the question was put for members to debate as to whether we adjourn or not. So your concern was already taken care of by the time the chair made that particular decision. I will allow members to debate on that dilatory motion as to whether or not we will adjourn or otherwise not adjourn. I have got my dashboard full. We need to limit time for purposes of progress. We will allow each member to take 2 minutes to speak on the motion moved by the majority leader. And I'll go by Senator Samson Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, mine are quick. I don't have a problem when there is an adjournment for the House leadership to build a consensus on the matter that is before, considering that it's more of a private issue and it concerns a member. So I don't have a problem. My only concern, Mr. Speaker, and which you will provide guidance, is that we had stood down some other urgent business of the order paper. Maybe you can allow the House leadership to congregate and consult, then allow the order paper to proceed as they consult. Then I think that would be very important, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't, today is Thursday, we are going next week for devolution conference. If the House leadership can consult and give a consultation with other members, then it will be in order. Mr. Speaker, I think we have done before. Even in many cases where we have requested for suspension or adjournment to some point so that we can consult, Mr. Speaker. But I think as a House, I agree that such matters in future, we must seek leave to go in camera, Mr. Speaker, because it concerns a member. I know Article 118 and open parliamentary proceedings, Mr. Speaker. In future, we must allow such issues, seek leave, go in camera, because it's about discussing a member. So with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I allow the wisdom of the House to prevail. Thank you.
Senator Beatrice Ogola Akije.
Honorable Speaker, I I'd put my button earlier, but now that I've been given an opportunity, I'm wondering that the majority leader would come in at this point of time, the minority leader comes at this point of time. This has been going on all along for the last few weeks. As you watched, we expressed a desire that you come and sort out this issue as leaders, and we all watched. Then we come in at this point and say, let us give it time, you want to find an alternative.
I will limit the members whom I'll allow to speak so that we progress, and I'll give 2 more on the majority side and 2 more on the minority side. And you'll take 2 minutes each. Senator Keroche Tabitha Karanja.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also rise maybe to support what the majority and minority have proposed. But mine is just to ask, as the leaders, why did we allow it to come this far? Why did we allow it to come this far? So that will be the question. I know the minority has said that he's been here for long. You've been here for long. You needed to advise the young coming senator that it is supposed to be done like this or this. Now, not even that. It is to ask, why wouldn't we? Because I had called her personally and asked her, what is all this? She told me she's gone all the offices and nobody has helped her. So that's why she drew it to the social media. I'm not supporting her, but maybe she couldn't find anywhere else to go. So as the leaders, I think we failed in this. We should have taken it before it reached to this point. So going forward, we ensure that will never happen again. Thank you. Thank you.
Honorable members, the direction the chair gave was that our debate is on whether to adjourn the motion or not, and not a debate on the motion. So as we speak, very well. Before I put the question, Senator Muma. Give Senator Muma the mic. Proceed to the dispatch box, Senator Muma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is to seek some direction on what happens. Leader of majority and leader of minority are asking for adjournment, but we are not clear for what. They have actually not given direction in that regard. I think as members of this House, we need to be a House that will stand for justice for all people involved. I wish to state that the clerk who has been accused of very serious issues is not present in this House. We are being watched by the public, which would include children of the clerk, the wife of the clerk, and allegations made are serious allegations that we need. I would want us to resolve this issue the best way possible, even if it is internal. But we want direction. Mr. Speaker, I think minority and majority leader may be abusing their space if they don't give us clear direction on how we resolve this issue. Those of you who are on WhatsApp are aware this is a matter that has gone on for long. We actually need to put this to rest.
Lastly, I'll give this to the Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, without going to the merit and merit of the report or the motion that is before this House, I really want to thank both the majority and the minority leaders for that important move that they have taken this afternoon. You know, Mr. Speaker, when things come to the family, you know this House is a family. It is always important, really, to caution ourselves. When a member of the family is under siege, it is always important for the whole family to come together and think in another alternative way other than debating this report. If we could go ahead and debate this motion and punch holes, and the chair of this committee is our speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, that could have been gone to the wrong way. So I want to say that I really support, but I'll advise my sister. I called out to my office, Senator Gloria. I want my dear sister to listen to me. As Njorin Cheke Heonda, I called my sister to my office before this committee sat. And I told her there are things that didn't need not to progress the way they were progressing. So I will really request.
Senator Kathuri, the debate was in the confines of.
Yeah, fine, I understand. I understand, standing honor, but there is a question I want to give. You know, an advice to my sister. I'm not retrogressing
within the time.
But I'm requesting her from today.
Thank you. Honorable members, order, please. Order. Senator Kaduri. Senator Kathuri, please take your seat. Please take your seat. Senator Cherargei, take your seat. Honorable members, I'm not going to entertain any additional interventions. I'll just proceed with the question that the debate be now adjourned. May those of that opinion say aye. Aye. May those of a contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Honorable members, you recall the order paper had earlier on been rearranged. We would like to go back to order number 7, that is questions and statements. Clerk. Senator, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I stand to ask whether one of us, Senator Murango, is dressed properly according to the latest guidelines given by the Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order members, please take your seats, or if you're consulting, consult in silence. Minority Leader, Senator Madzayo. Senator Madzayo. Order, please. Senator Wamatinga. Order, please. Order, members. Senator Mofaya, kindly consult in silence. Senator Mofaya, thank you. Clerk, read the next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements. This is deferred on the request of the senators. There are a number of senators who have got their statements, but they are not in the other paper. Yes.
Majority Leader, you have a statement. As we proceed to reorganize the order paper, proceed to issue a statement.
Sifuna. Wewe. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order number 57-1, I hereby present to the business of the Senate of the week commencing Tuesday, the 5th of September 2023. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the Senate calendar approved on the 16th of February 2023, the Senate will proceed on a 3-week recess at the rise of the House today. Regular sittings of the Senate will resume on Tuesday, 5th of September 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, the 1st of August 2023, the Senate considered and passed 3 bills at the Committee of the Whole and a 3rd reading stages. These bills have since been referred to the National Assembly for consideration. This therefore brings the total number of Senate bills referred to the National Assembly to 6. Additionally, the Senate has also passed 2 bills at the 2nd reading stage. The bills have transitioned to the Committee of the Whole stage. On Tuesday, the 8th of August 2023, the Senate adopted the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government's equitable share cash disbursement schedule for financial year 2023-2024, and thereon approved the county government's equitable share cash disbursement schedule for financial year 2023-2024, pursuant to Section 17(7) of the PFM Act and Standing Order number 189-3. I take this opportunity to laud the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget for its diligence in considering critical financial instruments that unlock funds to our county governments. I urge the select committees to emulate this practice by considering business referred to them and tabling the reports therein on time, in a timely and proper manner, pursuant to our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is still some work to be done as regards the business of the Senate. As indicated in the order papers today, at Standing Order number 9, 10, 11, and 12, there are bills scheduled for division. 3 at the 2nd reading stage and 1 at the Committee of the Whole stage. On this note, I request party whips to mobilize the requisite numbers of delegations for the divisions to be undertaken. This will clear the backlog of the bills schedules for division from the order paper. With respect to motions, 24 motions are pending conclusions before the Senate and will be accordingly scheduled by the Senate Business Committee in program of the Senate business for each week. I urge respective movers of this motion to be available in the Senate when the motions are listed. In terms of petitions, 15 petitions are due for reporting pursuant to Standing Order number 238-2. Of these petitions, 1 is pending before Standing Committee on Agriculture, 2 before the Committee of Devolution, 1 before the Committee on Education, 1 before the Committee on Finance and Budget, 2 before the Standing Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs and Human Rights, 2 before the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, 2 are pending before the Lands, Environment and National Resources Committee, 4 petitions are pending before the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing. I urge the standing committees to expeditiously conclude on the petitions and table reports pursuant to standing orders. In the event that there are many challenges in the processing of the petitions, my office and indeed that of the Senate leadership is open for consultations to address them. Statements continue to be increasingly sought by senators. There is a high number of statements pending for consideration under Standing Order number 53-1 by various standing committees, and I urge committees to expeditiously consider and finalize on the statements. Mr. Speaker, sir, finally, at the meeting of the SBC held on the 8th of August 2023, the committee approved a set of questions to be replied by the respective cabinet secretaries on 5th September 2023. The summary of these questions is as follows. Question number 18 by Senator James Lomonen, MP, to the Cabinet Secretary of the Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs on the inaction of Kenyan government to hasten the release of Turkana pastoralists arrested in Uganda. B, question number 19 by Senator George Mbugua to the Cabinet Secretary for Health on accessible health facilities and services to persons with disability. C, question by George Mbugua to the CS for Labor and Protection on compliance with Persons with Disability Act with regards to reservation of employment to PWDs. Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to wish all colleagues a safe and fulfilling break. I wish them well as they travel as well to the devolution week in Uasin Gishu, and wish that we can engage and have a fruitful consideration on the same. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the House for listening. Though grudgingly, I know that those who don't agree with us on the decision that we have taken, but I believe it is in the best interest of the House, and I want to plead that, because I listened to the comments by Senator Catherine Moma, Mr. Speaker, a lady I hold in such high regard, say that she will judge us extremely harshly as leadership if we let this matter pass, because I know it is not just about one of our colleagues, but it's also about one of our very senior staff, a man that I equally respect and have worked with very closely for 5 good years. A man of impeccable character, great Kenyan, a patriot, and therefore allow us to go behind the tent, as they say, and find ways. I believe that with the wisdom of retired Judge Stewart Mazayo, myself, ladies of great distinction like yourself, we will find an amicable solution to this. And we felt it will be a better route to consider it that way as opposed to the route that had been prescribed. Apologies that it had to come to this for us to realize how difficult a place we found ourselves in as a Senate. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do lay the statement on the table of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Aaron Cheriot, Majority Leader. Senator Eric Okongo Omogeni, a statement under Standing Order 50.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna, just 1 moment. Senator Sifuna, could you approach the chair, please? Proceed, Senator Congo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I first want to salute Majority Leader, Senator Cheriot, who has displayed a lot of wisdom this afternoon, the way he has managed the matter of Senator Gloria Oroba. And I'm sure that, Mr. Speaker, the leadership will be able to address this matter and give some counsel to Senator Gloria. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52.1 to make a statement on a matter of county-wide and general topic of concern, namely the tragic death of Majority Leader of the County Assembly of Nyamira and member of the County Assembly for Nyamaya Ward, Nyamira County, Honorable Elijah Osiemo, in a road accident along the Maimahiu-Naivasha Highway. Mr. Speaker, sir, the late Elijah Osiemo was a dedicated public servant who showed unwavering commitment to his constituents and the development of Nyamira County. His dedication to public service and the betterment of the community will always be remembered. It is indeed with deep sorrow that I acknowledge his passing.
Samson, what is your point of order? Senator Okongo.
Go.
Senator Okongo, there is a point of order. Let me listen to what Senator Cherargei has.
Mr. Speaker, you know, when I made mistake early by crossing the bar without bowing, it appeared it is trivial. But as the matter and procedure of the House, when you look at Standing Order 51B, it talks about the question, both the procedure for asking question, all the way to statements that my brother is making and I sympathize and empathize, even on general statements. The contents of the question under Standing Order 51B on a procedure only, Mr. Speaker, is that let us stick to the rules. I've heard Senator Okongo Omogeni, Senior Counsel and a Commissioner, making some comments outside of what he was supposed to read. Mr. Speaker, let us follow our procedure. A few minutes ago, I was called to order for crossing, and it is a minor thing. But now, how can you introduce something in a pretext of what you are supposed to read, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, is it in order? So that in future, Mr. Speaker, in future, what will prevent somebody from reading the statement and want to debate on their own statement? It's not the procedure of the House.
Senator Congo, you take note of that requirement of the standing orders and proceed to read your statement in compliance with it.
Mr. Speaker,
all right.
I note the concerns of Senator
What is your point of order, Deputy Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, my point of order is not what Senator Mugeni, my good friend, is doing, but there was a matter which was raised by my colleague there, Senator Moitet Betty, about the dress code, and which you did not determine whether the member was properly dressed. So, Mr. Speaker, maybe I can say the member has taken off. So,
indeed, for
thank
purposes,
you very much,
for purposes
Mr. Speaker.
For purposes of record, Senator Kaduri Murungi, indeed, it's true that that had earlier on been raised by Senator Mondet, and it slipped the chair's mind to make a ruling on it. Senator from Muranga, Senator Murango is not properly dressed. Kirinyaga, sorry. Yes, Senator Murango is not properly dressed. And since he's already left the chamber, that remains so. He'll be out of this house until he's properly dressed. Proceed, Senator Okongo Mogeni. Allow Senator Mogeni to end his statement, then you can raise your concern, Senator Medu.
Mr. Speaker, I'm lost. Statement on the tragic death of Majority Leader of the County Assembly of Nyamira. Mr. Speaker, sir, the late Honorable Elijah Osiemo was a dedicated public servant who showed unwavering commitment to his constituents and the development of Nyamira County. His dedication to public service and the betterment of his community will always be remembered. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is indeed with deep sorrow that I acknowledge his passing. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family, friends, colleagues, and the people of Nyamira during this difficult time. Mr. Speaker, sir, the road accident also resulted in the injury of two other honorable members of the County Assembly of Nyamira, namely Honorable Duke Masira, MCA Nyamira Township Ward, and Honorable Priscilla Nyatichi, nominated member of County Assembly. Mr. Speaker, sir, I express my sympathies to the injured MCAs who are currently receiving medical care. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I've since learned that Honorable Duke Masira has been discharged from hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, I pray for quick recovery and return to duty of Honorable Priscilla Nyatichi. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is imperative that we take this moment to reflect on the importance of road safety and adherence to traffic regulations. It is worthy to note, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the actions of a rider on a motorcycle that was carrying an oversized and unsecured load of charcoal may have contributed to the accident. Mr. Speaker, sir, while acknowledging that motorcycles, popularly known as border borders, have become an integral part of our transportation system, their widespread use, coupled with the practice of carrying oversized and unsecured loads, which in itself violates traffic regulations, poses a danger to all road users and has led to a significant rise in road accidents. Ordinarily, Mr. Speaker, sir, a load being carried by a border must be aligned with the rider. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is our responsibility as representatives of the people to address this issue comprehensively. I therefore urge the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing to collaborate with relevant agencies, law enforcement bodies and stakeholders in the transportation sector to put in place stringent measures aimed at curbing the practice of overloading motorbikes or motorcycles. Mr. Speaker, sir, I further urge the Standing Committee on Health to engage the Ministry of Health to set up emergency medical trauma centers along the Narok Maimayu Highway and other highways within the Republic of Kenya to ensure the provision of timely and effective medical response and care to accident victims and those in need of urgent medical attention. I say this noting, Mr. Speaker, sir, that with regret, it took over 2 hours for the late Honorable Osiemo to receive the closest medical emergency attention after the accident. Mr. Speaker, sir, may his soul rest in eternal peace. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica Maina, before you read, for the avoidance of doubt, and in particular with the issue that had earlier on been raised by Senator Betty on the dress code by the Honorable Murango. Indeed, it's just been brought to my attention that he had made a request to the Speaker earlier on in the morning through a written communication requesting for dress code accommodation today for medical conditions, and the Honorable Speaker had indeed granted that exemption to the Honorable Senator. So that should, and I felt is important for purposes of the record of this particular House, and therefore Senator Murango was properly dressed owing to the exemption that had been granted by the Right Honorable Speaker out of his request. Proceed, Senator Maina.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on the storage of food commodities during the bumper harvest in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should state the types and quantities of food commodities stored in the strategic food reserves, indicating the storage capacity of the reserves. 2, provide the price list of all the food commodities the government intends to buy or import for the food reserves. And 3, outline the strategies the national and county governments have put in place to effectively manage the storage of food commodities during periods of bumper harvest to ensure minimal waste and maximum preservation of the quality of the food commodities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Muma, proceed to issue a statement under 52 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I beg to make a statement on safeguarding adolescent health and rights in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 52-1 to make a statement on the health, to make a statement on the need for a conducive policy and legislative and programmatic environment for safeguarding the health and rights of adolescents in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, can I request that Senator Cherarkei and Senator Methu listen to me, please?
Can the senator be heard in silence? You consult in low tones, if you must.
Mr. Speaker, aware that there are approximately 11.6 million adolescents in Kenya, comprising a significant quarter of our population, Mr. Speaker, the 2019 census established that the number of adolescents aged 8 to 19 years was 115,080, making up to 29.7% of the population. That the population of persons aged up to 25, which includes those who will have transitioned from the age of adolescence, moves this age group to 35% of the total population. Recognizing that adolescence is a period that signifies the transition from childhood to adulthood and is marked by crucial psychological and mental growth, and is also a pivotal phase for human capital development. It is also an opportune time to reinforce fundamental values and beliefs, given that it is the most defining stage of human growth and development, a stage that comes with vulnerability and risks that require supportive and protective environment. It is evident that inadequate comprehensive investments and guidance to adolescents has been made. Inadequate comprehensive investments and guidance to adolescents can lead and has led to unfavorable decisions during this critical phase, which, with enduring implications into adulthood. Disturbing statistics indicate that since 2016, our health facilities have attended to a total of 2,347,754 adolescents in antenatal clinics, including an alarming 143,502 children aged between 10 and 14 who are pregnant. Furthermore, the data from 2022 is concerning, revealing that 42% of reported 59,715 cases of sexual and gender-based violence are among adolescents aged 10 to 17. Despite interventions implemented from January to March this year, a concerning 8,775 adolescents aged 10 to 17 reported incidents of sexual and gender-based violence. Additionally, in 2022, we witnessed an unsettling trend with approximately 62 new HIV infections, 62% new infections accruing among adolescents aged 10 to 19 on a weekly basis. These figures emphasize the urgent need for strategic and targeted interventions to safeguard the well-being and future of our adolescent population. Mr. Speaker, adolescents occupy a distinct phase that bridges childhood to adulthood, where they experience varying treatment as children or adults depending on circumstances. This is a stage that is also characterized by legal and policy ambiguities that turn out to be detrimental to adolescents. For instance, Mr. Speaker, the paradox emerges from the definition of all those below 18 as being children and encompassing adolescents who lack autonomous access to health care, yet they are regarded as adults when they become pregnant, even if this is just a 10-year-old. Curiously, there is tolerance across sectors to prohibit sex education for school children while failing to curtail access to permissive internet and social media platforms. This leniency exposes Kenyan children to explicit content, including pornography. Despite classifying sexual relations with children as defilement, official data that illustrates correspondence data on child abuse cases and prosecutions show that we have high numbers of child pregnancies, thus undermining deterrence. Official data that illustrates pregnancies recorded in is conspicuously absent, thus undermining the deterrence against defilement within families, schools, and religious institutions. Further recognizing that adolescence is a stage in life that is rife with legal ambiguities. No, Mr. Speaker, that is a repetition. Mr. Speaker, aware that adolescents encounter distinct health risks arising from sociocultural factors tied to biological and emotional changes of adolescence, including substance abuse, harmful traditions like child marriages and female genital mutilation, mental health concerns, sexual reproductive health, and communicable diseases such as HIV, among others, our health system must adopt to enable accessibility to health services by adolescents. Mr. Speaker, expressing concern over the plight of many children, particularly girls, who face defilement, rape, sexual harassment, and physical abuse within their social and cultural contexts, these challenges can and have led to child and teenage pregnancies. Mr. Speaker, acknowledging that adolescent health and rights intersect with various sectors, demanding collaborative efforts from government entities such as the education sector, the health sector, the children's services, social protection, gender, law and justice, as well as private sector, families, religious organization. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully implore this House, the Honorable House, to rise up and be the one that will truly elect to represent the rights of adolescents. One that must hold the national and county governments accountable by requiring them to integrate perspectives and experiences of adolescents when designing healthcare systems dedicated to their welfare. Presently, our healthcare framework chiefly revolves around infants and adults. It does not take care of adolescents. I therefore call upon the Senate Committee on Health, Standing Committee on Health, to convene in recognition of the different components that comprise the health and rights of adolescents, an audience with the cabinet secretaries in charge of health, the one in charge of education, the one in charge of internal security from the national government, and the Council of Government, with a view to doing the following. Number one, to urgently initiate a national conversation and consultation that should on the development of a comprehensive national policy on adolescent health and related rights, with a view to, one, integrating age-appropriate sex education and life skills learning into the Kenyan education system, guided by science, evidence of socio-cultural dynamics, and the values of our Constitution. Two, incorporate a specialized field in adolescent medicine within the medical training institutions and healthcare facilities, enabling professionals to focus on delivering comprehensive care tailored specifically to the unique health needs of adolescents. Three, to revise the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey data collection parameters to encompass data from children who have entered puberty. This adjustment is crucial in light of substantial evidence indicating a concerning number of pregnancies among children aged 10 to 14. Four, to review the universal health coverage and National Health Insurance Fund regulations to ensure adolescents access to cost-free health care services. Specifically, this includes provision for health care for menstrual-related diseases like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, and metrorrhagia, which is abnormal bleeding. Essential health services such as HIV and STI care, fistula repair, and reparative procedures for issues relating to FGM. And finally, to initiate a review of cases involving laws relating to defilement concerning consensual sexual activity among minors. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Muma. Senator Miraj Abdullahi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to request for a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources on the introduction of diving and lifeguard courses at the Bandari Maritime Academy and other technical institutions. In the statement, the committee should state measures put in place by the government to ensure the introduction of diving and lifeguard courses at Bandari Maritime Academy and other technical institutions in Kenya. That will equip the youth with skills to compete effectively in the global job market, particularly in sectors related to marine conservation, tourism, and water-based industries. 2, provide a timeline for the inclusion of the courses in all technical institutions, indicating how these courses will be integrated into the existing training curriculum. And 3, shed light into the process undertaken to assess the need and demand for diving and lifeguard courses in Kenya maritime training institutions, stating the industry stakeholders, if any, that were consulted during the assessment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Betty Montet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 on behalf of Senator Edwin Sifuna to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the planned importation of sugar. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state why government-owned sugar millers who are already staring at the collapse, partly due to rampant importation of cheap sugar, have been barred from the planned importation of sugar, yet their inclusion would improve their financial position. Number 2, explain the decision of the government to import sugar from outside the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa COMESA trading bloc, stating whether there is a shortage of sugar within the bloc, and if not, why partner states are unwilling to export the sugar to Kenya. Number 3, appraise the Senate of the measures put in place to ensure foolproof identification of the importers and proper regulation of prices to curb over-exploitation of citizens. And finally, outline measures put in place to safeguard local sugar millers, particularly from the Western Region Sugar Belt, from the effects of the importation and to return them to full productivity, noting that the livelihoods of millions of Kenyans livelihood of millions of Kenyans are impacted by the importation and the performance in the sugar industry. Signed, Senator Edwin Sifuna, Senator, Nairobi County. Statement number 2. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 on behalf of Senator Sifuna 2 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Energy regarding plans by the government to hand over management of National Oil Corporation of Kenya, NOCK, to a private investor. In the statement, the committee should, 1, clarify why a private investor has been identified to take over the management of NOCK, and if so, disclose their details. Number 2, explain the mechanism used or to be used to identify and appoint the private investor, indicating the measures put in place to safeguard the process from corruption. Number 3, inform the Senate of the entity that will determine the formula to be applied when sharing profits from NOCK between the state and the private investor. And finally, report on a full audit of NOCK's assets and liabilities to ensure the public of the true position of the corporation before the handing over. Signed, Senator Edwin Sifuna, Senator, Nairobi County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Betty. Senator Chute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm requesting for a statement on the status of inquiries by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in the arid and semi-arid lands counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights regarding the status of inquiries by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in the arid and semi-arid lands counties of Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, and Samburu. In the statement, the committee should provide per county details on the number and status of inquiries by EACC into allegations of corruption and irregular procurement in the county governments of Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, and Samburu, highlighting EACC's findings in each of the inquiries. Number two, Mr. Speaker, indicate the number of cases the EACC has recommended to the Director of Public Prosecution for prosecution, stating how many of these were prosecuted and how many were referred back to the Commission. And finally, Mr. Speaker, 3, report on EACC's inquiry into allegation of irregular procurement of a fire engine by the county government of Marsabit, listing the quotation bids received, the winning bid, the clarifying whether the county assembly approved the procurement and whether the purchase was supported by any development partners, and if so, how much they contributed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Samson Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations concerning recent terrorist attacks in the several parts of Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, one, Mr. Speaker, sir, explain the reasons for the increase in alleged terrorist attack currently being witnessed in parts of Lamu and northeastern region of Kenya. Number two, state the effect of the announcement of the reopening of Kenya-Somali border, stating whether the security agencies might have dropped guard compared to the previous state of alertness. Mr. Speaker, number three, outline any actions taken to involve the communities affected, considering that several attacks happen in the villages, an indication that they might be criminals living among the residents. So, Speaker, sir, and finally, state any measures that have been taken to curb terrorist activities from spreading to other parts of the country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. Senator Eddy. Senator Eddy, take appropriate measures to comply with the procedures of this House. You cannot cross as you have just done. I made earlier on that direction, courtesy of Senator Cherargei's non-compliance. And Senator Eddy, as you go to proceed to read the statement, you are required to bow at the bar. So in future, ensure that you get to the bar.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and you know I comply as I will always. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on devolution and intergovernmental relations regarding the boundaries of counties in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should provide an accurate map of Kenya that delineates the boundaries of each district of Kenya established pre-1992, clearly showing the geographical boundaries of Machakos district, and report on its assessment of the adherence to county boundaries in Kenya, particularly of Machakos County, highlighting any discrepancies in the extent to which counties align with the established boundaries. Mr. Speaker, it's just important to note that I'm reading this on behalf of Senator Agnes Kavindu Mudhama, who is the senator from Machakos County. And Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Eddy. Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to read a statement on a response to a statement sought by Senator Justice Retired Stewart Matsayo on withdrawal of security details attached to the Azimio One Kenya Alliance leaders. Mr. Speaker, sir, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 56(1) to respond to a statement requested by a senator from the committee. Standing Order 53(1) of the Senate Standing Orders provide that a senator may request a statement from a committee relating to any matter under the mandate of the committee that is of county-wide, inter-county, national, regional, or international concern. Pursuant to this provision, at a sitting of the Senate held on Thursday, 27 July 2023, Senator Justice Retired Masayo requested for a statement from the chairperson of the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on the withdrawal of security details attached to the Azimio One Kenya Alliance leaders. Mr. Speaker, at a sitting of the Senate held on 3rd August 2023, the Right Honorable Speaker of the Senate directed that a substantive response to the statement be submitted to the Senate before the House proceeds for recess today. Mr. Speaker, the committee has today received a copy of the response from the CS in charge of Interior, National Administration States, and states as follows. That, Mr. Speaker, the principal national security is the protection against internal, external threat to Kenya's territorial integrity, sovereignty, its people, their rights, freedom, property, peace, stability, and prosperity, and other national interests. The government respects and upholds the constitutional provisions, including the freedom of association and assembly, the right to demonstrate, picket, and petition. While the government respects the constitutional right to demonstrate, the organizers must stick to the confines of the Constitution, including and not limited to the stipulated time devoid of violence as stipulated in the Public Order Act. However, anyone planning to cause chaos, sabotage the economy, and engage in lawlessness will be dealt with in accordance with the law. Mr. Speaker, the members of the Azimio la Umoja coalition engaged in illegal demonstrations across the country. More often than not, some protesters turned rioters, and in some instances, goons, took advantage of the demonstration to loot businesses and destroy both public and private business across the country. The demonstrations led to disruption of the economy, injured and killed innocent citizens, looted private property, and vandalized public property, which led to massive loss in all the sectors of the economy, including hotels, bars, markets, supermarkets, shops, financial institutions, schools, petrol stations. This is contrary to Section 5, subsection 8b, and Section 6 of the Public Order Act. Mr. Speaker, all persons, including current and former political leaders and public office holders, have an obligation to follow the law. The mandate of the National Police Service is to ensure protection of the lives and properties of Kenyans. The Azimio One Kenya Alliance leaders organized and engaged in illegal demonstrations, which put their security details in direct conflict with other law enforcement officers. As a result, their security details were withdrawn since they were escorting these leaders in violation of the law and in the unlawful demonstrations. A copy of the response from the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior, National Administration is annexed to this statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that brings to an end the statements, and I will allow cumulative 20 minutes for members interested to give a few remarks in all the statements that have been read this afternoon. And Senator Asige Crystal.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the statements that have been read. Mr. Speaker, specifically, I would like to contribute to one that has been read by Senator Muma because it struck a chord with me. Mr. Speaker, it's extremely important to look into the health care of adolescents in our country. I absolutely agree with the statement because not only have I heard and been a part of the stories of young people who are going through all kinds of challenges accessing healthcare through their adolescent years, but also because I have been one of those adolescents, Mr. Speaker. When I was young and I was dealing with the declining of my eyesight, that was when I was a teenager, I was not afforded any type of healthcare, any type of service, because unfortunately at the time, perhaps technology had not caught up with the condition that I now have and have acquired, and through that a disability. Mr. Speaker, it's extremely important not only for non-disabled adolescents, but of course for disabled adolescents. I have given many stories here on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, about the plight of persons with disabilities and young people with disabilities. And I'd like to give one more just to underscore this statement, whereby young people, young adolescents who have disabilities are being removed from sex education classes because they are thought to be asexual. They are thought to not need to understand sexual education because, hey, they have a disability, right? Wrong, Mr. Speaker. They also absolutely require and deserve to be sat in those in the sex education classes, to be taught beside their non-disabled adolescent students and colleagues, so that they can also be afforded the knowledge and acquire the access that they need to healthcare services, whatever the form. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, I also would like to say that the statement has been read, and I would like it to be expanded if possible, because it's not just about access to physical health or sexual health, it's also about access to mental health services. It's very important, Mr. Speaker. The challenges that young people in 2023 are going through are not in any shape or form the same as what we were going through when we were adolescents, or even our fathers and our grandparents, Mr. Speaker. And so I wish that this statement could even consider adding mental health services for young people. Mr. Speaker, we've had on various platforms, on news and the newspapers, all across our counties, young people complaining of mental health challenges, having to buy and consume antidepressants at 14, at 15, at 16, Mr. Speaker, and the side effects therein are unfathomable. Mr. Speaker, you were here, and we all were here earlier in this session when the motion was brought in the Powers and Privileges Committee. And as the sponsor of this statement even said herself, the people who are involved in that particular motion are going to be affected, not just in this house, but outside. The clerk was mentioned. And also, I would like to mention that Gloria Oroba, of course, is privy to all of what has been happening. But, Mr. Speaker, what we didn't talk about, we talked about, we did talk about the dignity of this house. We talked about...
Senator Crystal, you recall that that debate was adjourned, and
Yes.
I want you to refrain yourself from commenting on it for now.
Mr. Speaker, I am just laying a foundation I am still talking about adolescent care,
Please,
if you'd allow me.
Please confine yourself to that bit. Don't get into the debate on the motion that was adjourned.
Speaker, we talked about the people involved in the motion. However, we did not consider that they have also adolescents that they are taking care of at home, and how this news will affect them now that we have opened the can of worms to the motion. Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is that there are people who are behind the individuals, and there are young people, and how they will be affected by the viral videos that may go around the internet. What will they say to their students in school? That's what I mean about mental health, Mr. Speaker. It's extremely important, and it has been, there's been an example of that here today. Mr. Speaker, I just want to underscore, and I thank the sponsor of the statement for bringing it to the House, but absolutely, we need to look into, as well as physical health care, access to sexual health care, we need to expand access to mental health care. The Mental Health Care Act, has of course been ascended into law. However, we need to look into the implementation of the same act, especially in this demographic of young people in our country. It's extremely important. The chasm is too wide, and I appreciate that this statement has been brought, and I hope that all of the different barriers to access to healthcare for adolescents will be addressed therein. I thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make my comments on the statement by the Honorable Agnes Kavindu on border conflict.
Senator Mungatana.
Yes.
What's your point of order, Senator Eddie?
Mr. Speaker, I rise under the standing order number 40, read together with number 41. And I wanted to seek your indulgence whether this House is properly constituted. As we are sitting here and discussing, do we really have the right quorum to be able to execute on these matters, Mr. Speaker? I request you to check. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Clerk, kindly confirm the quorum. Honorable members, having confirmed that we do not have the requisite quorum, I ask the clerk to ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Honorable members, we now have a quorum. The bell may stop. Senator Mungatana?
Yes. Yes, Madam Speaker, I was going to make comments on the statement regarding boundaries that was read to us on behalf of Senator for Machakos, Agnes Kavintu. Madam Speaker, I seek to support this statement because we have had a lot in terms of border disputes. And Madam Speaker, it is not just the question of Machakos border. The boundaries disputes must be resolved, Madam Speaker. And I'm speaking with advice, Madam Speaker. There is a problem right now between the boundary of Kitui and Tana River County. So, Madam Speaker, as the committee is looking at the issue of the boundaries of Machakos County, may they also advance their investigation to cover the disputes between Kitui and Tana River County. Madam Speaker, the issue that has continued to disturb us is that the colonial districts were the ones that defined the boundaries as we know them. And Madam Speaker, the boundary of Tana River was well defined by the colonialists. But Madam Speaker, what has been happening is that the boundary on the northern side in Bura constituency has been progressively moving backwards, eating into the land of Tana River. And Madam Speaker, this has caused a lot of tension. A few years ago, Madam Speaker, even schools were burnt down and her whole population moved away with Kitui, with support of police. With support of police, Madam Speaker, pushing whole populations of Tana River back into Tana River land. Madam Speaker, as we are speaking now, you have Kenya National Examinations that the centers administered from Tana River, but you are told administratively those schools are in Kitui. Madam Speaker, you have voting and polling stations that are voting in Tana River, but then they have an SEC who is from Kitui County. Madam Speaker, there's a lot of confusion in that border. And as a result, there is tension, a lot of tension. Madam Speaker, the administration of both sides at the county levels have met, but this has not resolved the issues. In fact, Madam Speaker, the regional commissioners have also met from Kitui, Tana River, and Garissa County, northeastern. That is Coast, Northeastern, and Eastern regional commissioners. They held a meeting, but still the matter has not been resolved. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, tensions are climbing. So I want the committee to widen their investigation, not just to talk about Machakos, but to go ahead and look at the boundary dispute between Tana River and Kitui. Madam Speaker, people have died because of this conflict. And right now, nothing has been determined. So I am urging the committee to look into this, because the boundary cannot be shifting towards Bangal. Bangal is very much interior into Tana River, and Kitui has been pushing. Madam Speaker,
it is the way forward, I believe. One of the fundamental steps that must be taken is that the director of survey from Nairobi, not the surveyors of Kitui County or the Kitui or Tana River County, but the director of survey from Nairobi should come and determine the original colonial boundary before discussions are held. Because leaving the things the way they are and leaving wananchi to quarrel is not the way government should operate. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Professor Ojende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to contribute on the statement on the importation of sugar that has been made this afternoon by the Senator for Nairobi through nominated Senator Betty this afternoon. Madam Speaker, sir, Madam Speaker, let me say that the sugar industry has suffered several challenges. There have seen several attempts to privatize the many sugar factories under the Privatization Act. And Madam Speaker, only a few days ago, His Excellency the President directed that some of those processes stop so that we are able to get control of our sugar industry and the sugar sector. Madam Speaker, let me comment as a farmer, as a sugarcane farmer, that the sugar industry is in its deathbed in this country. And we can see activities both in factories like Mumias, Mohoroni, Chemelil, grinding to a halt. And some of our farms, Madam Speaker, are under receivership. I wish to point out to the fact that the statement sought on the importation of both COMESA and non-COMESA sugar go to circulars that have been released by the Minister for Agriculture allowing importation. And let me state that the importation is intended to bridge the gap so that the price of sugar can come down. I think it is an effort that we must support as Senate because as we improve the sugar industry through deliberate measures of ensuring that we put in money in input so that the production of sugar is at a level that is manageable so that we control prices, we must, in the short term, Madam Speaker, ensure that the citizens of this country who consume sugar are able to buy sugar from the shelves at a rate that is affordable. I know that one of the problems that the industry suffers at the moment, Madam Speaker, is the lack of mature sugar. Most factories, Madam Speaker, in this country are unable to harvest sugar because the farmers, Madam Speaker, are not able to produce sugar competitively, and the sugar in the fields is either immature and some are harvested when they are not yet 18 months, Madam Speaker. And the effect of that is that the level of sucrose in the sugar does not attract competitive prices for the farmer. Madam Speaker, the Sugar Bill 2018 that has come through this House and that was tabled before this House, Madam Speaker, has several interesting propositions. And Madam Speaker, this House should support reforms within the sugar sector so that the farmer is able to put money in his pocket at a level that can enable the farmer not only to continue farming, but also to be encouraged to farm sugar so that we don't have situations where, Madam Speaker, certain farmers of sugar are now clearing the crop so that they can produce maize. And maize production has also its problems, Madam Speaker. I support the statement, but we need a balance, a deliberate balance, between importation in the short term, but also ensure that inputs enable the sugar farmer to produce sugar that is competitive so that they have money in their pockets for other purposes, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Methu.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would actually want to take very, very few minutes so that I allow my colleagues to also make their comments. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my comments on the statements by Senator Veronica Maina on the storage of food commodities during the bumper harvest, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, sorry. Because, Madam Speaker, this is a very serious issue that must be addressed and looked into, Mr. Speaker, because as a country, it cannot be that after every harvest, every bumper harvest, Madam Speaker, the country then goes to a situation of people who require food reliefs every time, Madam Speaker. It is even sad, Madam Speaker, that even now that some places have bumper harvest, the government is still distributing relief food to some other places within the Republic, Madam Speaker. As a country, Madam Speaker, we must and we need to invest solidly on our reserve for food, in the sense that, Madam Speaker, as it is now, in the county that has elected me to represent them in this Senate, Madam Speaker, it is such a good time for the people of Nyandarua that we have harvested potatoes, unprecedented quantities of potatoes, cabbages, carrots, Madam Speaker. But then it is very sad that because most of these commodities are perishable, Madam Speaker, out of lack of storage for our produce, Madam Speaker, then we are not able to have or store them for quite some time, Madam Speaker. We take cognizance of the fact that, Madam Speaker, the government has done a cold storage plant in Orkalau, Madam Speaker, but it's not enough. It's not enough because, Madam Speaker, as it is now, a whole sack of over 50 kgs of potatoes in Nyandarua, Madam Speaker, is retailing at 1,800 shillings in Nyandarua now, Madam Speaker. If you want to help farmers, Madam Speaker, especially of those who produce perishable products, Madam Speaker, we must invest so heavily, Madam Speaker, in ensuring that we prepare adequate and modern storage facilities for them, Madam Speaker, so that they're able to store. We are happy, Madam Speaker, that the government of the day has committed that they will provide farmers with milk coolers, Madam Speaker, so that we're able to store our milk for quite some time, Madam Speaker. Because the reason why potatoes are retailing at 1,800 in Nyandarua today, Madam Speaker, is the simple reason that we cannot be able to store these potatoes so that we can sell them when we get good prices for the potatoes, Madam Speaker. The farmers are left with little or no option but to sell even at throwaway prices, Madam Speaker. As it is today, Madam Speaker, in the county that I lead, Nyandarua, if a cow sees you headed to its direction carrying cabbages, the cow will run away because they are there in plenty. But in a short while, Madam Speaker, 2-3 months down the line, then the people will be waiting for relief food from government. Having gotten such bumper harvest, 2-3 months down the line, they cannot be able to feed the nation. It's a very sad situation, Madam Speaker. So I support this statement, Madam Speaker. The Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries must move in speed, Madam Speaker, and ensure that they sort out this problem. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the time allocated for comment on the statements is now up, so we will move on to the next business. What's your point of order? Yes, Senator Eddy.
Madam Speaker, I am definitely not supposed to challenge your ruling by any regard, and that's not my intention. But Madam Speaker, when the time that was allocated for these statements was given to be about 20 minutes, I think the House was slightly scanty. And there are some statements that were very, very, very weighty, that have got impact on our economy, that I wanted to just urge, if through your honor, Madam Speaker, you could allow some more time for us to deliberate on those statements that have got some weighty issues, if you find it Honorable Madam Speaker to help us with that time to discuss some of these statements that have been pushed forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I wish to rule on this. I will allow not more than 2 minutes comment for the remainder of the senators, who are 3. This is Senator Cherarke, Senator Mwaruma, who is not here. Oh, Mwaruma is there, and Senator Osotsi. Honorable members, Senator Eddy, as you make reference to the fact that the House was empty, is really not the chair's problem. I think members ought to have been in the House because we are in session. But I understand the importance of the topics, and I would allow 2 minutes each for the 3 senators that are queued. Thank you. Okay, you can speak after Osotsi, but you're not there. I'll give you a chance. Okay, Senator Cherarke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 2 things, too, on Senator Chute's, Madam Speaker, statement on the functionality of EACC and anti-fight against corruption in counties. Mr. Speaker, I want to request further the JLAC to include all counties to give us the status of the fight against corruption. Number 2, Madam Speaker, sorry, I've seen the statement by the Chairperson of National Security on the issue of withdrawal of security bodyguards to the Asimio Brigade or Asimio Member of Parliament. Madam Speaker, I agree that when you participate in an illegal demonstration, you are not entitled to be given government service or security protection, Madam Speaker, because the CS of Interior has averred in the letter and the statement by the committee that under the Public Order Act, it was not possible to allow the police to escort members of Parliament allied to Azimio One Kenya Alliance to participate in an illegality. Because, Madam Speaker, you cannot set the police against each other. And I want to thank this committee for coming out clearly. We have had cases where even the dead bodies were being hired for public sympathy addiction, Madam Speaker, and even allegations of cars being shot at. I think I want to ask committee further, as I support their report, Madam Speaker, to go further and investigate even allegations of bodies being hired for public sympathy and addiction, Madam Speaker. The issue of cars being shot or attempted assassinations, Madam Speaker, we need the committee, upon your direction, to go further. But in summary, I agree that any person who participates in a legal demonstration, they should not be allowed even an inch of a bodyguard, Madam Speaker, because it will be unfair to allow somebody to go to demonstrations and then give them the police. The same police will shoot at each other and setting against each other, Madam Speaker. So I support this statement with the strongest terms possible. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwaruma.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa fursa hii ulionipa ili kuchangia taarifa ambayo imeletwa na Senator wa Machakos, Senator Agnes Mudhama, kuhusu mipaka kati ya counties. Swala la mipaka kati ya counties ni swala ambalo ni nyeti sana, na county nyingi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ziko na utata wa mipaka. County za sasa hivi, Mheshimiwa Spika, zinategemea sheria ya mikoa na wilaya ya mwaka wa 92 ama District and Provinces Act ya 1992. Lakini kwa sasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna county nyingi ambazo ziko na shida ya mipaka na ukosefu wa kuelewana katika mipaka ya county, Mheshimiwa Spika, umeleta utovu wa usalama mara nyingi. Kule kwetu Taita Taveta tuko na shida ya mipaka kati ya Taita Taveta na Kwale, Taita Taveta na Makueni, Taita Taveta na Kajiado. Na nimeleta mara zaidi ya 100 katika hili bunge swala la kuangazia mipaka kati ya Taita Taveta na county ambazo ni jirani. Mheshimiwa Spika, niko na taarifa katika kamiti ya devolution ambayo nafikiri tulielewana na wale wanakamati waite kaunti ya Kajiado ili waje tuelewane kuhusu ule mpaka na vile walichukua shamba kule Taita Taveta, lakini nafikiri bado haijafanyika hivyo. Swala la mipaka, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri si la kupeleka kwa kamati ya devolution kwa sababu ni swala la mashamba. Kulingana na mimi, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri swala la mipaka linafaa
nusu dakika tafadhali umalizie.
Kupelekwa kwa kamati ya mashamba kwa sababu ni swala ambalo linahitaji ramani ama maps. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ningefurahia sana kama ile statement yangu ingetolewa kule kwa kamati ya devolution ili iletwe kwa kamati ya mashamba. La mwisho kabisa, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri kama bunge la Seneti, mambo ya kubadilisha mipaka iko katika ibara ya 188 ama article 188 ya katiba ambayo inatakana kuwe na tume ya kuangalia mipaka. Kuna sheria ambayo iko katika Seneti inaitwa County Boundaries Act bill ambayo inatakana tuiangazie kimaukini na haraka ili tuweze kuangazia na kuangalia mipaka yote katika Jamhuri ya Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo hiyo bill ipelekwe mbio mbio iishe ili mpaka yote ya kaunti zote 47 za Kenya ipate kuangaziwa. Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Osoti.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment on two statements. One is a statement on boundaries, county boundaries, and two is a statement on sugar. Madam Speaker, on the issue of county boundaries, this is a very emotive issue and an issue that requires urgent attention by this Senate. And I think via statement, it may not really give us a solution to the problem we want to address. I think I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Mwarua, that the bill which is before us in second reading, that is County Boundaries Bill, sponsored by Senator Kajwang, must be fast-tracked. I am very disappointed, Madam Speaker, that this bill keeps on appearing on the order paper, and now on today's order paper it has disappeared. It's not there. So I want to implore the Senate Business Committee to prioritize this bill so that we can actualize Article 188 of the Constitution and have this matter of boundaries resolved. In my county, I have a boundary issue between my county and Kisumu County. And these people have lived harmoniously for many years, and we would like a framework in which we can address this problem. That is the County Boundaries Bill. On the issue of sugar, Madam Speaker, sugar issue has been a problem in this country. And it is a problem that every successive regime has taken advantage to allow sugar barons to make money at the expense of farmers. Madam Speaker,
give him 1 minute.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, the sugar companies have been shut down for 4 months at their own request. The millers made a request and the government agreed. But the government refused the request by the millers that within those 4 months when they will be shut down because of cane shortage, they should be allowed to import sugar. But the CS for Agriculture, in his own wisdom, decided to allow the sugar barons to instead bring in 100,000 metric tons of sugar. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is going to open the gates for the sugar baron to bring in sugar. Meanwhile, the employees of these particular companies are going to be sent home for 4 months. I know some of them have even done a salary cut of up to 40%. Mr. Speaker, where are we heading to? I think if we have a scenario like this, sugar millers should be given the priority to import the sugar and not the barons who make money, who are politically connected, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support the statements.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the statement by Senator Sifuna on sugar importation. And Mr. Speaker, right from the bat, I want to say that I do support the stoppage of importation sugar because, Mr. Speaker, people might not understand sometimes when they speak about these issues. But the cane price is dependent on sugar price in this country, Mr. Speaker. So that when, for instance, you have got 50 kgs of sugar going for about 5,700 as was in the first quarter of production this year, Mr. Speaker, the cane price will be about 4,583. But now, Mr. Speaker, in this last quarter, we have seen the sugar prices of 50 kgs going for about 5,000, Mr. Speaker. Then it means that the cane prices dropped to about 4,200, Mr. Speaker. The problem with this, Mr. Speaker, is that we actually do have cane in our farms. We people who come from the sugar-growing counties, people have canes in their farms, but the millers, even if they take canes into their farms, because of these duty-free sugar importers and the players, Mr. Speaker, there is no commercial sense of actually crushing those canes. So it becomes very difficult for those millers to actually be able to convert the cane into sugar, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, this statement should be a statement that the relevant committee must just come up with a recommendation on how we regulate the importation of sugar and avoid duty-free sugar, not only on commercial players, Mr. Speaker, but even outside. Otherwise, these industries are dying, Mr. Speaker. Our farmers are having their cane drying in the chambers, Mr. Speaker, and the only thing that can stop it is this idea that some players who are not sugar millers, who don't have what we call outgrower schemes, who do not.
Your time is up, Senator Eddy. 30 seconds.
I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that in 30 seconds, the players who do not even have outgrower schemes are the players who are again given these importations of sugar. And I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that if the government of the day is serious, they should know that if you allow our millers to be able to crush our sugar cane without importation of sugar, you will even make it possible for those millers to reduce the sugar price to 50 shillings a kg, Mr. Speaker. It's completely possible. I'm a sugar cane farmer, and I know. Therefore, I support that statement, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable members, I will allow Senator Mandago to close on these remarks.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this statement, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statements on the issue of sugar, Mr. Speaker, in the country. And this is because sugarcane farmers are farmers in this country who have suffered for so many years because of the situations of management that we have had in those sugar factories, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, we must also take cognizance of what the government is doing, Mr. Speaker, in revamping the sugar industry in Kenya. And, Mr. Speaker, the senator for Vihiga, unfortunately, has walked out of the House, but I wish to inform him that already there is a cabinet memo that has been approved, and government has rescinded the decision to privatize these sugar companies, but to pump in resources to revamp these sugar factories, Mr. Speaker, not just in the western part of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, but in all the sugar factories in this country. Mr. Speaker, we should take note that the current importation of sugar is meant to alleviate the high prices that the Kenya citizens were facing, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, we should differentiate between trade and farming. However, Mr. Speaker, the companies, the sugar factories we have, putting in prudent management in future should also be included in those who are going to participate in importation whenever there is a shortage. But, Mr. Speaker, these companies and the boards of management must also tell us what is this traditional ritual of closing factories in this country for 4 months under renovation or on, I don't know, some mechanical servicing of these factories. How comes that these renovations or maintenance of factories are not done in a systematic manner so that we don't shut all the factories at once, and therefore creating a local shortage of sugar in the country, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I think this calls for prudence in terms of management of these sugar factories, and we are asking the boards of those sugar factories in this country to be serious about the management and also scheduling of maintenance. In any case, Mr. Speaker, the sugar factories we have in this country are not 1,000. They are just less than 50, and they can have their own caucus to agree on a maintenance schedule. And whenever they decide to together maintain all the factories at once, government will be left at no option but to make sure that sugar is available in the country, because sugar is a commodity that is consumed in every house. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that sugar has been imported outside the Comesa region. But because government wanted to reduce the price, there is no choice. You have to look for the cheapest sugar from anywhere in the world to make sure that ordinary Kenyans can get affordable sugar in their desk. We want to urge the Ministry of Agriculture and the Kenya National Trading Corporation that whenever they import, they should also import and make sure that the cost of...
Senator Mandago, your time is up. Thank you. Now, honorable members, owing to the numbers in the House, we will defer division on order number 9, order number 10. Order number 9 is on the prompt payment bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2022. Order number 10, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 16 of 2023. Order number 11, the Equalization Fund Administration Bills, Senate Bills number 14 of 2023. And order number 12, Committee of the Whole, the Learners with Disabilities Bill, Senate Bills number 4 of 2023, shall be deferred to the next sitting. And members, I now want to rearrange the order paper so that we call out order number 16. Clerk, call out the next order.
Order number 16, motion, integration of ethnic minorities and marginalized communities in Kenya. Resumption of debate interrupted on Wednesday, 2nd August 2023.
This one is a motion that progressed and was deferred on the 2nd of August 2023. Senator Wamatinga, MP, had a balance of 11 minutes. He is not in the House. Senator Samson Cherargei proceeds to give your contributions to this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I want to commend Senator Cheptumo for bringing this this motion on the issue of minority groups, on the integration of ethnic minorities and marginalized communities in Kenya. I'm Speaker, noting that minority groups and ethnic communities has been recognized under Article 56. The state shall put in place affirmative action programs designed to ensure that minorities and marginalized groups participate and are represented in governance and other spheres of life. But Mr. Speaker, sir, sorry, if it takes the attention of the House and Senator Cheptumo, the mover of the motion, to know that in the history of Parliament, especially the Senate in the last session, although we lost him, Senator Victor Kibrengei was an Okiek, the first Okiek to be nominated by a major party then, our former party, may it rest in peace, Mr. Speaker. And also may our colleague rest also in peace. Senator Victor Kibrengei was elected on the strength, nominated on the strength of Article 56. But unfortunately, we always assume, Mr. Speaker, sir, most of the time, I don't have a problem with PWDs, but most of the time, the huge chunk of nomination, hiring, we normally take it only to the PWDs. We must also include the marginalized and the minorities in the group. You remember, and we want to thank President William Ruto. The other day, I've issued citizenship to the newest tribe in the coast. I think tribe number 44, if I'm not wrong, in recognition. So those are 4 marginalized. There are many marginalized communities, either in Kalenjin, in Kikuyu, there are Ndorobos, there are Sengwers, there are many other marginalized groups, even the Okiek, Mr. Speaker, sir. And when you look under Article 56, a special opportunity in education and economic, even in Nandi County, we have 2 tribes of marginalized communities, the Talai and the Okiek. Okiek predominantly live in Serengonik, in both Nandi Hills and the Tindred constituencies. And according to population housing census of 2019, there were 20,000 Okieks. And they live even up to Bomet, where you come from, Kericho, Trans Nzoia, Wazingishu, Baringo, also Narok and Nakuru. All this, especially where the famous mouse trap is where the Okiek. And they consider this forest as their original home, Mr. Speaker, sir. So even and we want to challenge counties, because even in Nandi, when we did the adoption of land historical injustices of Talai, one of the recommendations when the House adopted then chair is, Mr. Speaker, sir, is creating affirmative appointment within the county government of Nandi, specifically for the Talai and Okiek, to try and be in line with this. But unfortunately, the way Nandi County Executive is constituted, there is no recognition of these individuals, both the Okiek and both the Talai. And therefore, even as we call upon the county national governments to do, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must also encourage counties out. I don't know the formation in Bomet County. Maybe when you'll have a chance to contribute on the motion, you can share with the House. I don't know also in Kericho. I don't know in Narok, in Wazingishu, and 80 other counties that has had minorities. Even in the Luo Nyanza, Mr. Speaker, there are also minority groups there, like I think the Suba, Mr. Speaker, sir. So this is the recognition. We want the Migori, even when you go to Migori, the other communities that feel they are minority. And therefore, I want to encourage Senator Eddie through, and also the Governor Ochila Yako, Chair Emeritus of CPAC, to also be appointing those communities which are minor, because you are just complying with the law, Mr. Speaker. Even in that adoption, because that is a historical, Talai land historical report, we even propose that they should have special opportunities. Say that when you are hiring, you give them special attention. Even we want to escalate this, even to hiring of the ongoing Kenya Army recruitment process, TSC, Kenya Police, among other opportunities by national government. I wish they should be, I know normally they say marginalized minorities and PWDs are encouraged. But when it comes to the actual, Mr. Speaker, sir, they don't do it. When you look at Part C, especially in access to employment, that is what I have been discussing, development their cultural values and languages and practice. Madam Speaker, the Okiek where I come from, which are around 20,000 in Serengonik, in Tindre sub-county and Nandi sub-county, they consider the forest as their home. They have their own practices. They have their own cultures the Constitution recognizes. I don't know why the reason they are always being evicted, even in the Mau. Yet Okiek, their natural habitat is the forest. That's the way, Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege when I used to serve as the chair JLAC, as your predecessor. I had the opportunity of visiting Promandinho in Brazil and other 4 states in Brazil. And when we were discussing about the protection of Amazon, although it's facing a lot of challenges, I saw a documentary where people are now, the illegal loggers are looking in the Amazon region. The Brazilian government has given them the opportunity to live among the forest, Mr. Speaker. We are not saying the Shampa system should be used such a model, but we want them to be allowed because that is their habitat. I don't think the Okiek, if they are allowed to live in the forest, they will destroy the forest. The people who destroy the forest, by the way, are the illegal loggers. I have never met the Okiek who consider forest as their home. And one of their culture and beliefs and values believe protecting the flora and fauna of the forest is among their beliefs, Mr. Speaker, sir. The other aspect, I have reasonable access to water, health services, and infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, where they live around Serengoni, Cherondo, Tereno, Kapchanga, among other areas within Tindred and Kapchorwa Ward and Tindred Ward and even Kapchorwa Ward, Mr. Speaker, sir, unfortunately, and I want to thank this House because out of the equalization fund, under Article 204, we had millions allocated to Nandi County. I think they're around 200 million under equalization fund. I'm happy the huge chunk of money is going to Kapchorwa Ward, where OKX majority live in Serengoni, and also part of Soba Songo. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, when you visit Kapchorwa, you cannot access by road. I saw some, you cannot. Nandi County government has done absolutely nothing in Kapchorwa Ward and in Soba Songo, yet it has unique. It is predominant to landslide, Mr. Speaker. You cannot access those places, the Cherondo areas, Kapchanga, Tereno, Kapkoros, all those areas, Mr. Speaker, you cannot access. So there has been no affirmative action by the county government to even ensure there is ECD, there is access to water and education. But I want to assure them with the passage of equalization fund, Mr. Speaker, sir, they will have an opportunity because the huge chunk of money will go and access. And I see, even as you go to Sirwa, Cheptabach, Mr. Speaker, you cannot access those areas, and majority of these people live there, and I think they have received an injustice. Because the same people who live Serengoni, Mr. Speaker, sir, these Okiek, which are around 20,000, across the 5 counties that I have highlighted, in Nandi, there is no day they have been taken care of in terms of, I visited Cherondo, I visited Kapchanga, I visited Sirwa, part of Sirwa, all those where they live around Keben. Among those areas, the roads are in pathetic states. They don't have ECT centers. They don't have dispensaries, Mr. Speaker. Sir. Even a place, as you exit to come to Kapkoros on your way to Metete, Maraba, they don't have access to medical facilities, and that becomes a challenge. And we are violating Article 56, not even mentioning Article 43 on the right to access to clean water and health, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the upshot, what we are just saying is that I'm happy, in conclusion, because this is my second and final point, is that most of these county governments have failed in recognizing marginalized and minorities. I want to challenge in the resolutions, and I know it will come to your committee, where you are the chair, to get us an audit of hiring both at the national and county governments in especially access to employment opportunity, number one. Number two, to get also audit from county governments of Nandi, Nakuru, Narok, Wazingishu, Kericho, Baringo, and I think Bomet, because it's part of that. To get us the audit, how many OKX have been hired, for example, in Nandi County? I would really want to know. How many dispensaries, roads, schools, ECDs that have been fixed to address what Article 56 is talking about, access to water, health services, and infrastructure? How many? I will also want to know how many electricity are they accessing apart from electricity, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Speaker, sir, that is the only way. Let us do an audit. I would want your committee, the way you have presented a wonderful petition, and I wanted to comment to it. I don't know, I would have expected land historical injustices is huge. It did not only affect the Kipsigis community, it affected also the Nandi. We have issues of land historical injustices, especially lands in Nandi sub-county, Tindred sub-county. They were, because of the two multinational companies, we still have a long way. And I really want to commend, I would have gotten an opportunity to commend them, but because of pressing of time, I want to commend your committee. We want to see such a report, so that you table and so that these minorities and marginalized courtesy of Senator Cheptumo, our learned senior, will have opportunity to be proud of. So Speaker, sir, finally, I want to thank African Charter and Human Rights because they took it was Ogie community versus the Kenyan government. In 2022, and I know you are aware because you have been straddling corridors of justice like Colossus, and you are aware of the developments that happened in that human rights court, or Odokiek, I think it was Arusha, Tanzania. And one of the key issues that repatriation case of Okiek came about, one, they were given a compensation individually of $847,256,000 US dollars and $491,295 US dollars that was given as general damages, Mr. Speaker, sir. And therefore, this repatriation case is very important. And you being a legal practitioner and learned scholar, we want to, when you are doing the report, please include the decision by this human rights court. In fact, it goes ahead and say those people should be given land demarcation, land titling. They should be shown their land. If they are living in the forest, they should be degazetted and demarcated and be given the title. And that was the decision of the highest human rights court, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to go to the Bangui Charter of African Human Rights Court or even United Nations or even move to other international courts. I think this repatriation court that was made, the Okie community, the Kenyan government, and I want to request your guidance in your committee to even write to the Attorney General. What is the Kenyan government doing to implement the decision of African Charter Human Rights Court decision in Arusha about the repatriation case of the Okie, so that that can form the basis and give life to Article 56 on the essence and the value that we are giving, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, many Ogie, my people, the Ogie community in Nandi Hills sub-county and both Tindred sub-county, have been calling me day and out to find out, is the government complying with the decision of human rights, Mr. Speaker, sir? So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I really appeal that we need to relook at these issues. I support this motion. I hope when the House adopts this motion, kindly, Senator Cheptumo, and in your own motion, Suwamoto, which the committee can have, these are weighty. This issue of minorities, majority, is very weighty. I would like also to see the people of James, the people in Doropo, in Baringo.
The same purpose and serving the people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And it is fair and important that we take time, Mr. Speaker, to take stock of how far devolution has worked, Mr. Speaker. We identify the gaps that have been there, Mr. Speaker. I'm so happy that, Mr. Speaker, during this session, we had an opportunity to have a high-level meeting with the Council of Governors, between the Senate and the Council of Governors in Naivasha, Mr. Speaker, so that we can agree, Mr. Speaker, as the people who are supposed to deal with representation, legislation, and oversight, Mr. Speaker, we can be able to even agree and get to understand even from the governors, Mr. Speaker, where they believe and feel that we can be able to support the counties, Mr. Speaker. It is in this particular session, Mr. Speaker, or the other session, Mr. Speaker, that we passed the division of revenue, Mr. Speaker, the 385 billion, and we are, we feel very encouraged, Mr. Speaker, that the current administration has been able to push this money to the counties, Mr. Speaker. This is what we've been saying, Mr. Speaker, that once this money we agree on this money, Mr. Speaker, it has never and it can never be a privilege that the National Treasury sends this money in time to the counties, Mr. Speaker. So without taking much time, Mr. Speaker, I move the motion. I call upon Senator Cheptumo.
Mr. Speaker, I arise to second this motion. And Mr. Speaker, as I do so, I just want to inform this House how significant the new Constitution has transformed the functions of this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you recall before 2010 Constitution, calendar of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, was being controlled and managed by the executive. But today, Mr. Speaker, if you read Standing Order 32, the Senate Business Committee shall, with approval of the House, determine the calendar of the Senate. It's not the executive. It's not the president. It is Senate itself determining its calendar, confirming the independence of Senate, Mr. Speaker, that we can determine our calendar, when to sit, when to go on recess, when to come back, what business to deal with. And this is a complete departure from the initial situation where the executive would actually determine. Even just like the election date, Mr. Speaker, now is no longer determined by the executive. It will be done now as per the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the majority leader, shortly, you recall, was able to, in this House, was able to explain and outline what we have been able to achieve, Mr. Speaker, before this adjournment motion. And I want to agree with the mover of this motion that, Mr. Speaker, we've done a lot, so many statements being sought by members, replied to by the standing committees, so many bills before the House, debated, passed. Others have gone to the other House for approval. Petitions before the House. Mr. Speaker, and all this confirming the functionality of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this recess is justifiable because we are doing it within our powers conferred to us by our standing orders and the Constitution. And even, Mr. Speaker, as we prepare now again for the devolution conference, which is also another opportunity for us as a country and as a House to assess how far we are with devolution, engage with the governors, so that, Mr. Speaker, we see how we can improve devolution. So I think, Mr. Speaker, it is a motion that I think is justifiable. I want to support, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order number 31.3, the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 5th September 2023. Senator Okech Eddie Gisharu.
Chair, I thank you, and I do understand the pressure of time on colleagues who have been able to stretch this much today to be here, knowing very well that in their mind, today we are going to adjourn the House. But I think that I stayed this long because I do recognize that this actually is a privilege motion. It's always a privilege for any House of Parliament to adjourn, because it indicts in our minds, without our permission, the invitation to be able to go and reflect on what we have been able to achieve in this part of the session, and reflect on how we can be better going forward. That's why I want to really appreciate my brother, the Senator, the Honorable Senator from Nyandarua, Senator Methu, for pushing forward this motion. Mr. Speaker, this session has been a tempestuous session. I say tempestuous because we have been sitting in this House while also the country has been facing a lot of challenges, but in the same sense, also a lot of opportunities. And I've felt, Mr. Speaker, that some of the deliberation we have had in this House, whether through statements, whether through motions, and sometimes some serious bills that the mover of the motions and Senator Methu talked well to, we have been able to engage in those challenges and opportunities, Mr. Speaker. But I also want to say that as a House, we've also been tested. Tested because this House seeks to endorse the majoritarian element of our governance, Mr. Speaker. the value that a member of a county brings into our parliamentary arrangement in this country, Mr. Speaker, has some more weight than the value that a member of National Assembly brings into the National Assembly. Not because of any miniature elements, but because the representation that comes into this house recognizes that there is some element of executive powers that have been devolved and decentralized to our counties, for which, therefore, we are asked to be able to keep, to account, and to oversight. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we go to this recess, I don't want to bore us much because I know that you have spent so much energy, Mr. Speaker. I want to invite this House to go and reflect on this duty of whether in law or in the DNA of the country's moral standing, the function of this House being a upper house can be evaluated to that extent, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate your seat, Mr. Speaker, with the substantive speaker as well as all the panel members of that seat, Mr. Speaker. And I also want to congratulate our leaders for having led us to where we are today. But I also believe that there's an opportunity here, Mr. Speaker, as we go for these 3 weeks of reflection, to be able to go and reflect whether this House is living to its expectation, Mr. Speaker. The biggest function that I would wish as a young senator sent from Migori and serving under that privilege of power given to me by the people of Migori, censored by the same privilege of this motion, Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that there are instances that we have been called into this House to speak to some serious bipartisan issues, Mr. Speaker, and these bipartisan issues, we have not been able to rise to the occasion from our own sides of the House, Mr. Speaker. I want to see us reflect on how can we make this House better in terms of enabling debate, enabling deliberations, enabling a conversation among us, not between the two houses, but among us as senators of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. This is my single most wish, Mr. Speaker, as we go for this particular recess. And I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, as I finish, to actually do thank the member of our administration. Mr. Speaker, they have worked really, really hard. We have learned from them. They have helped us a lot. And I hope that they also take this time to re-energize and be able to strengthen that functional unit that make this Senate a Senate. Because sometimes we say that heroes, not all heroes and heroines, wear hats, and they make this House work. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we thank you for staying with us this long. And in the same spirit, may I take this opportunity, knowing very well that sometimes you'll be called to task to work in the committees and even in some other functional responsibilities like the devotion conference that the mover talked about, but even still, in the little time you'll get to rest, to energize, to be able to reflect, may I take this opportunity to also wish you well and hope that you will come back with more energy, more passion, and most of all, a compassion to lead all of us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion.
Thank you, Senator Eddie Gisheru. Senator Karungo Thangwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to support this motion, it is a parliamentary tradition that once in a while the Parliament goes on recess, and the main reason is to give the senators an opportunity to focus on their constituencies, which is the counties, Mr. Speaker, and the constituents, those people who voted for us, Mr. Speaker. You know, just the other day, Mr. Speaker, they started referring to me as the leader of the majority votes, because I believe in this side of Kenya Kwanza, I am the senator who was voted for with the highest number of votes. So you can imagine how big is my county and those people who voted for me. So I would want time within these 3 weeks so that we can be able to go and interact with them.
Senator Karungu, would you like to be informed by Senator Methu?
Yeah, he's welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just so that we get the facts right, I would want to inform my very good brother, my elder brother, Senator Karungu, that while we all agree that it is not in question that he is the senator of the majority of votes, it is also not fair for him to conclude that he reads the biggest county. The biggest county in the 10 Mount Kenya counties is Nyandarua County. Maybe we are not as populous, but in terms of size, we are the biggest county, so I represent the biggest county in my region.
Proceed well informed.
Thank you. I'm well informed. If we are talking about kilometers, yes, Nyandarua, but if we are talking about people, Kiambu is the biggest county. Mr. Speaker, when you're on recess, the Senate or senators will have an opportunity to attend the 8th Devolution Conference that will be taking place in Uasin Gishu County, that is Eldoret Town, from 15th. As a firstborn of devolution, because I was voted for as an MCA in 2013, I have seen devolution grow. And this is the only opportunity that we get, Mr. Speaker, to showcase what we have done as a county executive, as a county government, as the legislators. We get together and discuss how far the devolution has come. And Mr. Speaker, as I was talking about my constituents, and I have an opportunity now to start meeting them, just yesterday, the president was in my county, that is Kiambu County and Thika, where he commissioned a water project that will serve Thika people, Githurai people, and Ruiru people. And he promised that he has almost 400 billion that he wants to build a special economic zone in Thika at the Del Monte farm. Mr. Speaker, the president gave the leadership of Kiambu 14 days to solve the problem that is making that project delay because of some issues in court, some issues with Del Monte land. And this will give us a good opportunity and time to go and sit down and look into this matter, because we are supporting the agenda of Kenya Kwanza administration, and we believe these special economic zones will create jobs not only for the people of Kiambu, but also the people of Murang'a and Kenya at large. Mr. Speaker, senators are also, by law or by standing orders, expected to, once in a while, address the county assemblies, Mr. Speaker. And you know the county assemblies copied the calendars of Parliament or the Senate. But at this particular time, when we are on recess, we are able to engage the MCAs. We are able to form that kind of consultation so that going forward, and when we come back on the 5th of September, Mr. Speaker, we will already have at our fingertips what our people and our MCAs want us to do. Mr. Speaker, I am the chairman of the Roads and Transportation Committee. And the other day, I was giving a report on the floor of this House, and I told the House that during the month of August, we are going to retreat to write about 3 reports. And that is a report on Buxton, where residents were removed from their residence to build affordable housing. We have another petition about the Chiromo Crossing Bridge. We have another petition of Homa Bay, where the people of Homa Bay petitioned the Senate to follow up on an issue of a ferry. And we have concluded all these deliberations, Mr. Speaker. So during this time of recess, that is when we are going to retreat as a committee so that we go write these reports. And when you come back, we'll be able to table this report because we do have some good news. We have some good news.
Senator Karungu, are you willing to be further informed by the senator from Nyandarua?
You know, the Bible says, my people will perish due to lack of knowledge or information. I need more information.
To inform him.
Thank you very much. I only needed to remind my good brother that amongst the reports that we are working on is a report that I am jointly, my committee is jointly dealing with his committee, which I think is ready, and we shall also be dealing with about a message that came from Nyandarua County Assembly on the Ndonyonjero Ihithe Road, which his committee has been very instrumental. We have visited, we have done site visiting with his committee, and I think we shall also be doing the report in addition to the 3 that he has also mentioned.
Proceed to...
Yes, that was good information. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That was good information because we work closely with the Lands and Natural Resources Committee headed by Senator Medu, and we actually visited that road that is going through Aberdare Ranges, Mr. Speaker, from Ndonyonjero in Nyandarua County all the way to Ihithe in Teto. Mr. Speaker, that road is going to shorten a distance of 3 hours by 45 minutes. So you can imagine such a road connecting 2 counties that are food baskets of this nation. So you can imagine what we are going to do to this country when it comes to food. And food production, I mean, food prices will go down. Even the other day, I saw in the media, Mr. Speaker, the people of Nyandarua are complaining because they have too much food and people are not buying. And that is what we were saying as Kenya Kwanza administration, that we want to increase food production. But with this road, now they will be able to transport their produce to other counties, and it will be cheaper even when they come here to Nairobi. And nobody will, again, wear sufurias on their head. And Mr. Speaker, if you ask the people of Nyandarua why they no longer, actually they never, it was only one person who was doing that, why they don't do that, put sufuria on their head, they say it already has ugali. I mean, it cannot fit. It cannot fit on the head. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is this recess gives us a very nice opportunity to interact with our people, to go back. It is exactly 1 year since we were voted for, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday was 9th of August. A year ended yesterday since we were voted for. So we have to go back to our people and give them our scorecard. And once we give them our scorecard, we tell them what we have been doing, what we have done. Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Senator Thangwa, to conclude your remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Actually, I will conclude there, but it gives, this recess gives us an opportunity to go back to our counties and give our scorecards to the people who voted for us, tell them what you have been doing. I know there was a report the other day that somehow said how many times people have spoken in Parliament. And I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to look into that because as much as you speak, we also have to look at substance, Mr. Speaker. You may not speak more, but also give substance whenever you speak. Mr. Speaker, I do support.
Honorable Senators, this was a motion that does not require putting of the question, and there being no other senator who is interested in contributing to this motion, the House therefore will adjourn. And Honorable Senators, it is now 16 minutes past 6 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 5th of September 2023 at 2:30 p.m.